All right, welcome everyone. I'll just give you a moment to join the room before we get started. And a welcome to everyone watching us in Slido. I'll just give everyone a minute to sit down with their coffees and teas before we get started. All right, I think we've got everyone. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our final session in the Launchpad Bootcamp program. For this final week, we are focusing on partnerships in EdTech. So I'd like to welcome everyone tuning in from Zoom. We have our regulars that are part of the Launchpad Bootcamp cohort, so welcome along, and also welcome to everyone joining on Slido. If this is your first time at an EduGrowth event, welcome, lovely to see you, and hopefully we'll see you at many more. Over the last 5 sessions of the Launchpad Bootcamp program, we've covered a range of topics designed to support your journey in building a startup company within the EdTech space. We're delighted to have hosted thought leaders from across the EdTech, education and investment sectors for incredibly insightful conversations. And we have another group of experts joining us today, so thrilled to introduce them to you in a few moments. This is our last session as part of the Bootcamp series, so thank you to everyone who has joined us for each and every one. We've really enjoyed your participation throughout the program, and we really hope you've gained some valuable insights and some key learnings you can implement into your business after this. Now, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land to which we gather on. Although we are dispersed across many traditional lands, we are connected virtually. I am coming to you from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge the continuous and unbroken custodianship of the land, waters, and cultures of this country, and thank their elders, past, present, and emerging, for allowing us to gather here today. I also pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us. To kick off today's program, we'll be welcoming Cherie Diaz, as well as Peter Comstart and Dominic Saparito to screen in a few moments, where they'll discuss the role and importance of cultivating partnerships in the EdTech sector. But before we jump into that, I would like to highlight a couple of partnerships that have made today's program possible. So our 2022 Launchpad program has been created in partnership with AWS, Amazon Web Services. So a special thank you to Mo, Camille, and the team for your support in collaboration with EduGrowth. We will put a link in the chat below where you can find out more about Amazon's membership AWS EdStart program. And you can learn more about opportunities to connect with AWS and potentially form a new partnership. Also, if you'd like to be part of more programs like this, you should consider becoming an EduGrowth member. So this is for those specifically joining in Slido, because I know everyone in Zoom is already a member. We're always looking to engage with new entrepreneurs in the EdTech community. So to find out more, please click that link in the chat as well. So I think that's enough of me talking. I'm going to invite Cherie Diaz to the stage to facilitate today's discussion. So I'll just introduce you, Cherie. So Cherie is the Executive Director, Education Innovation at Western Sydney University. She thrives on leveraging her experience as an educator and operational executive to partner with academics, industry, employers, and EdTech to deliver market-leading learning experiences. Welcome, Cherie.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, everyone. It's great to be part of the session today, particularly as I've only recently moved out of an EdTech company and working with an EdTech organisation called Open Learning for the last 4 years. So hopefully can impart some insights into the discussion. I am joined today by 2 great experts in the field. I'm going to prop them up and talk them up so that they can impart their knowledge as well. So I'm going to do a brief intro to each of them and then also hand over to them to explain in more detail who they are and what they do in their day jobs. So first of all, we'll start off with Dominic Saparito. So Dominic's the co-founder of Intern Match and is helping to solve the global employability problem by placing interns into internships on behalf of education providers. Having previously run vocational higher education colleges, I can attest to the fact it's not always easy to do that effectively and smoothly. So Dom is also a serial entrepreneur who's always happy to give guidance to new founders. Dom, I might hand over to you to let you explain in more detail what it is you do.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Yes, my name's Dom, one of the co-founders of Intern Match and also Mentor Match. And I've started 20 businesses in my career. 10 of them were absolute rubbish, so I shut them down really, really quickly, except for one that cost me a lot of money. I've sold 6 and I'm working on 4 at the moment. And I can honestly say hand on heart that partnerships has been probably one of the most important things throughout every single one of my businesses, and look forward to expanding on that a little bit more in this discussion.
Awesome, thank you. And next up is Peter Comstart. So Peter is the Learning Partnerships Manager at Melbourne Business School, although I'll let him talk about a new role very shortly. So Peter is a passionate and innovative education specialist. He's led student mobility across multiple education sectors and currently leads partnerships at the Business School, Australia's top business school. We're also fortunate that Peter's given up part of his annual leave or his holiday to join us today as well. So Peter, over to you to give us a bit more detail about you and your role.
Thank you very much, and hope everybody can hear me well. I'm dialing in from San Francisco. As I just joked earlier, I haven't, set up a new partnership and won millions of dollars over here, unfortunately, but I've got a couple of days left, so see how we go. But thank you, Cherie, and it's great to be here talking about partnerships and EdTech. And I'm coming at this being in the higher education sector for about 17 years, lots of universities, global mobility, partnerships, industry engagement roles, some government roles, etc. And I'm currently at Melbourne Business School, so I look after partnerships in executive education. But actually, what's really exciting is when I go back to work, and next week, I'll be leading a new venture partnerships function. So I'll be supporting venture partnerships. So really, what I'll be doing is reaching out to edtech companies and startups and seeing how the business school can help experiment and incubate and support. And we've got a bit of money from the board to sort of really experiment and set up a new innovation lab. So it's exciting times, not just for the business school, but I think for education providers and some really interesting stuff happening in Australia and globally. So I'm really chuffed to be here and look forward to discussing some of these topics today. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So today's session obviously is about partnerships and partnerships for growth, but also an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. So having done a number of chats and sessions and panels with EduGrowth before, I can guarantee we'll easily fill the time talking once you get us started, but please reach out, add in the chat any questions you've got so that we can make this as informative as possible for you guys. I am going to kick off with, why partnerships are so important, particularly in the edtech space. Peter, let's start with you. What's the value in making connections with people, whether or not they're going to end up being a customer in the long term? Talk us through, why you think partnerships are so valuable.
Yeah, great question. And I guess a couple of things, and something that I discuss with my team quite a bit, given the rise of platform business models globally and how interconnected companies are. I think it's a bit of a provocative point to make, but in essence, I think if a company doesn't partner, it possibly dies. And a lot of companies have died over the years for not sort of moving towards new partnership models. So certainly it's about survival, one. But I think from an education perspective, our sector is evolving so quickly, moving towards student-centric ways of doing things, new technology, new opportunities. So certainly it exposes our business and our sector to new opportunities. And I think connecting with, founders, investors, other edtech specialists and voices really just gives us new business opportunities. So I think 1, survival, 2, new business opportunities, and I think 3, that connectivity between what students learn, what industry is wanting to do, I guess what researchers are thinking about and developing, and the R&D, that sort of triangle is reducing in size, and it's interconnected. So I think it's just the future of how we do business, is to do it collaboratively and with others. So I think that's why it's important. And I think there's lots of fantastic opportunities when we come together like this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the observations I've had, and I don't think it'll be a surprise to many people, but that cycle of showing that you are listening to that feedback loop is getting shorter, but more important than ever to show that you're listening and meeting the demand as well. Dom, you've just told us how many different endeavours you've entered into. You obviously have some great insights as to, the importance of partnerships, as well as how you go about making them.
Yeah, and with partnerships, I think, further to Peter's point, there's just so much to do, especially if you're starting a business, that you can't do it all yourself, and you can't be an expert at everything. So I have always networked a lot, and I make sure that I go to industry events, networking events, at least one a week. And even my kids who are in university at the moment, they're both at RMIT. I force them, even though they're a little more introverted than me, to go to an event at least once a week. And when you go there, your job is to connect with the three most important people in the room. And so forcing yourself to get out there, meet people, have a chat with them, it builds up some resilience if you are a little bit introverted, and it means that you're going to meet lots and lots of people, and who knows when you might use them in the future. So to me, without a doubt, it's about getting out there to industry events, chatting with people, connecting with them, and forcing yourself to do that. And I always say to my mates, there's not a thing I can't do in Melbourne in particular without going through a friend. Even if I want grand final tickets, if my beloved Blues are playing, I know I can get one through a mate. And so I often say to people, your networks are the most valuable assets you will ever own. So encourage everyone to get out there and make networks and partnerships.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to make, and one that I know personally, reflecting on my journey, didn't understand the value of networks as early as your kids do because of that insight. A couple of years ago, I was invited by Monash University to speak on a panel to education students. And one of the questions they asked is, what are those lessons learnt? And what I called out is the importance of networking at any level and any type of role, is the network that you build and the insights you gather, but also that the anecdotal conversations that you come across and the insights that you can learn from not just what's happening in the same type of organization or institution, but broader than that, it does pay dividends just from that, connection and knowledge building piece as well. If I can add to that, I challenge people to network outside of the direct areas as well. So what can you learn in those spaces that you may, already be a subject matter expert in a particular field, but, even if marketing, as an example, isn't your strength. So what are those marketing network opportunities so that you can start to build that and pick up lessons and learnings as you go in a fun environment as part of that as well, which I guess leads on to another area. We've got networking. What other tools can you use as a partnerships person or an edtech founder to help build up your success story?
Well, the number one tool I think is LinkedIn, and anyone who isn't on LinkedIn, especially at university, get on it now. It is the most important tool, and do not rely on emails because they're rubbish. As you probably know, or I know, I turn up every day. There's 100 emails in my inbox, most of them from people trying to sell me stuff I don't want, that I've never heard of before. And everyone knows, if you want to catch me, hit me up on LinkedIn. In fact, a really funny story. I was at a conference the other day, and one of the guys from Blackbird, one of the founders, was there, and I quickly linked in a young gentleman who I know worked at Blackbird. And I said, tell me something funny or unique about this guy that was in this panel discussion. And he told me, and in real time, he gave me the answer. And I quickly asked the guy that question. And it was so unique that guy made a beeline for me afterwards and said, Dom, how on earth did you know the thing that you asked me? And so now we're mates. So LinkedIn to me is extremely valuable. And there's a couple of things. It's got to look like your resume. You must have just a picture of your face. Girls, I do not want to see a picture of your bodies and torsos. Not interested, just your face. And the most important thing is to send a personalized message to every single person that you connect with. If you do not do that, you've missed the point of LinkedIn, because it remains in the message area forever. And so, Peter, who I'd not connected with, I just sent him a little message just then and said, hey, Peter, great to present with you at the EduGrowth thing today. Which means that will be there forever. So in 2 years' time, when I need him to give me a 50% discount to do my MBA at the Melbourne Business School, I will know where I met him. And that's the power of LinkedIn.
Yeah. Peter, is there anything you'd add to that?
I think, thank you for the 50%. Wow.
50%. Well, we're mates now, Peter. We connected. We're partners.
You know what? Two things that just spring to mind is one, I think the transactional costs of partnerships have decreased over the years, and obviously tools such as LinkedIn and things like that make life easier. But I think for me, the relational skills also is a tool in itself. And I saw some names earlier that I've connected with people in the international education sector. I just saw one or two names pop up. And I think just staying connected to those people over the years has really not only enabled my career and my networks to flourish, but spending the time each week to actually invest in some of those relationships and follow-ups. And, LinkedIn is fantastic as a tool, obviously, but the time I spend each week to actually nourish those networks and connections and reach out to people and connect with people is substantial in a partnerships role. So I think if your role is partnerships focused, you're probably spending, half a day or a day a week just on that. So I think that's not to be underestimated as well, that it is just actually doing the hard yards and reaching out to people, as I did to Cherie about a month ago, I think, or 2 months ago, asking her some industry insights. So it's that as well, I think.
Yeah. And I think there's a piece there that, quite often I can only estimate the amount of hours everyone on this session is doing each week, that it's easy enough to put it off because your to-do list is always going to be too long to get to. But I get the piece that I'd challenge, and Peter already called out, the amount of effort, is that those connections and the human connection often brings life and that passion and remind you of the passion of why you're doing what you're doing. But I'm yet to come across, in the last, 5 or 10 years, I've probably come across 3 or 4 people that have said no to a conversation or no to offering a connection or doing an introduction, etc. So also don't be shy of asking for that introduction or asking to connect and get those insights, because we've all gone through some form of learning process or have some insights. As a founder, you get to choose which of those insights or connections you then take forward. But in general, the entire EdTech network that I've experienced over the last few years is very generous with their time and insights and willingness to support participants in the sector as well. So leverage them. That's what we're here for as well. I can see there was a question that popped up.
I think as before you answer that, Cherie, sorry, I was just going to add, I've just signed up a community manager to help me with my networking as well. So that's another tool. If you've got some money in the kitty, and if you can employ somebody that is going to look after and build your community base, if you have a kind of partnerships role, obviously, or even if you just want to sort of develop that out, that helps immensely. And that's going to free up me to do other things as well. So that's a great tool that I'm going to tap into, definitely.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So Lauren's asked, as a founder in the very early stage, what's the best way to protect your idea when networking and speaking to people? So Dom, I'm going to throw to you on that one.
Well, firstly, do not worry about it. People are far too lazy to steal your idea. I've had thousands of ideas. I socialise them with everyone. No one has ever stolen my idea. And also, you don't need to be the first. I think Peter was talking about how he went in an Uber, but he called it something else. Like Uber wasn't the first rideshare company. It was, I think it was Magic Cabs or something. So do not worry about socialising your idea. In fact, you want to socialise it as much as you possibly can to get the feedback. You need to validate your idea with people who are going to give you, because you don't want to do it with your family and friends. They love you too much. No matter what you say, your mum's going to say that it's a great idea, or if she's a pessimist like my mum, she'll probably say, stop being an idiot and go and get a proper job rather than being an entrepreneur. But no one will steal your idea. Do not worry that people are going to steal it. People are far too lazy.
Awesome. Peter, anything you wanted to add to that?
I think I agree with that sentiment, and I guess as somebody that receives proposals and opportunities and ideas from startups and ed techs, often they come to the school, usually through to me, and some of them will say, "Hey, are you happy to sign some sort of commercial agreement?" No issues from my perspective, from the school's perspective, from the university's perspective, because we would do the same if we were going to be sharing something of importance of the school that had, some sensitive material. So there's no issues in asking either. If you're reaching out to a university or a school, you wanted to sort of say, hey, would you be wanting to have a meeting, but I'd be more comfortable to sort of send you a draft, whatever you call the agreement. There's, lots of different types out there. But so I would say there's also generally no issues signing those. As somebody that receives a lot of them often, I have no issues signing something like that as well.
Hey, Peter, have you ever known anyone to enforce an NDA ever in your...
Probably a couple of times over the many years, but I think if it gives somebody just more confidence to use that kind of document for their own well-being and sense of having things ticked off, all good. But yeah, we respect them accordingly. But to your point, how enforceable they are, etc. It's a good point.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's there as an option for you. Quite often when I've spoken with early stage founders, they've used a model where they'll do an initial chat and sort of scope the idea, and if there is that connectivity of being able to feedback or provide insights, then shared and followed up with more information. And as Peter said, if needed, an NDA. My only caveat I'd say, if you're using an NDA, try and keep it as streamlined as possible.
Yep.
Particularly if you're dealing with the likes of a university, etc. If that has to go via a central legal department, the more streamlined it is, the easier it is to work through that process. Another one. So for an early startup, what are the legal/contractual requirements to consider when initiating partnerships? I'm going to put just a scope in that before I open it up for other input. Is I think one of the key pieces as a startup is to have some clarity as to what type of partnership you're going to market with. And that might even be part of those initial conversations you have with, industry or other founders or even market research as to what other products or services are doing, so that you can start to define what you are and aren't willing to do as part of that partnership model. But also think through, it may be doable at a particular size, but also think forward in terms of, as you scale, are you going to be able to deliver against that on scale across whatever regions you're working in and multiple partners? Because it's okay to negotiate different clauses for one partner, but if you're doing that ongoing across all of your partnerships, it quickly becomes messy and difficult to maintain. Peter, Dom, any other insights?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say something along the same lines, and even also just thinking about, you know, the kind of equity model you're already thinking about. To your point, it could be different in different regions, etc. But also a minor share, a major share, or, you know, we look at a lot of joint venture type stuff in the university sector, revenue share models, etc. I think the one thing that I would say is, if you do have reservations about, you know, the rigidity of a university funding model in the higher education sector, or a business school, or a, you know, top business school, I would challenge that a bit to say they're evolving and they're looking at different opportunities and lots of unique equity arrangements. So go for it is my advice. And the kind of old ways of doing things where maybe 50 people have to look at it through 50 committees, I'm seeing that change, because universities have realized that it's taking too long to get SHIT done. So they're evolving.
And I'd say, you know, I've got lots of sayings, but one is good fences make good neighbours. And I think start with an MOU, so a memorandum of understanding. What are you going to bring to the partnership? What are they going to bring to the partnership? And if you can write it down and share it with your potential partner and get them to comment on it, that's a really good start. And then try it out and perhaps follow up with the legals later, once there's a good understanding of what each party is going to do in the partnership.
Yeah. And I might even take it a step before that, is some of the talking, you know, as Peter said, unis are changing. So I joined Western Sydney Uni 2 months ago in a role that is part of that change process. And many of the universities now have roles like Peter's, like mine, and many others. But also, you know, many of them have defined frameworks. So Western Sydney has a partnership pedagogy in terms of how they actually work in partnership with industry and providers and that sort of piece. That even before you get to an MOU, quite often as part of those initial conversations, even having that discussion, more general discussion as to, here's the strengths that we see we bring, here's what we would love to be able to leverage. And I know I'm talking about a university, but this goes broader than that, to all the different types of education providers, government, etc., that you may be partnering with as part of that process, or joint venture, or you know, investment, etc. Having that open and frank conversation at the beginning is key to avoiding ambiguity and confusion as you get further down, either whether it's contract negotiation or operationalizing what you've actually agreed to, because then you can, as much as possible, make sure you're all talking the same language and you're understanding exactly what you're delivering against as well. I guess one other question, because we've talked a fair bit about networking and keeping in touch and that sort of stuff. Besides face-to-face events or online events and LinkedIn, what other tools or mechanisms do you guys use to stay in touch with what's happening? John?
Oh, Peter, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I'll just touch on a few things. And I think obviously Victoria, New South Wales different, but, you know, as a Victorian, you know, obviously connecting with entities like EduGrowth, Startup Vic, associations. I've been in the international education sector for too many years, maybe, but even through that, the associations and networks, I'm involved with IEAA, EAI, NAFSA, ISANA, etc. All those, I think, are investments of time where I can quickly get a read on what's happening with one or two newsletters, updates, maybe a yearly event. It's a fantastic investment of time and sometimes money. Some of these are paid memberships, which really just enable me to quickly get a lay of the land of what's happening in that sector, what's changing, what's not. And I'm not, you know, as deeply into the startup sector as many people here, I'm assuming, but I think even through the last 6-12 months, engaging with, you know, even things like FinTech Australia, Austrade has fantastic networks as well. Just joining some of those networks, I think, is a huge investment in your time, and then getting to the root of issues and emerging trends and opportunities can really help fast track it. So that's what I do quite regularly as well.
Yeah, and I would say definitely not a current affair. That's a waste of time on Channel 9. Forget who the host is, but she's hopeless. But to me, someone once told me when I first started my career at KPMG that you're often judged on what you don't know, just as much as you are on what you do know. And so if you're going to be in the ed tech area, or you're going to specialize in internships or whatever it might be, you got to know what's going on in your area of expertise. So as Peter mentioned, all those different associations, their newsletters, make sure you subscribe to them and spend some time. I would spend at least an hour a day updating, commenting on stuff on LinkedIn, reading articles and things like that. And I'm really busy. So if you guys are just starting and are just out there trying to build your career, I think you should probably spend twice as much as I do. So, a couple of hours a day, making sure you know what's going on in your industry.
Cool, thanks. If I can add to that, I'd say as well, don't just stay within industry. In terms of ed tech, it's great to be connected with the likes of EduGrowth, and trust me, they've been invaluable over the last 4 years in my previous role. But there's also, what do you learn from parallel industries, whether that's tech or others? So is it the Tech Council of Australia that you're staying connected with and the work they're doing in that space? Is it, one of the great ones that I always track is what's happening in the marketing sector, because often that preempts the changes in trends in consumer behaviour and customer behaviour as well, so that you can stay ahead of what's coming towards education. We quite often are a little bit slower, but it's great for insights and even to, names and that sort of piece when you are talking. And then there is the education sector itself from an edtech perspective. So what are those segments that you are looking to play in and connect with, that you are keeping track of those leading policy papers or discussions and changes that are having an impact, and they will have an impact on your business to some degree. It's a case of you being across those changes coming so that you can determine what degree of impact they have, or how are you going to show your partners that you're on top of it and able to support them through that change process as well. As well as an important piece is the education sector is increasingly seeing the value and the contribution that EdTech is playing in the sector. So they're more open, more and more, to having the EdTech voice in the room as part of that review and input process. So if I give an example, the latest international education strategy, that included voice of EdTech into the review process and the recommendations that were put forward. So there's that opportunity as well to be an active voice in the conversation as part of the partnership. If I talk about some other elements, I'm going to throw to Dom one question is, as a founder, what's the value of engagement and partnership with other founders?
With other founders, wow, different perspectives. What are they doing? Who are they partnering with? Insights from other people who are, out there trying to, change the world and solve the biggest problems is invaluable. You can't just sit in a cocoon and I see this far too often, especially again with introverted people, say developers who've started a business, they just sit there coding away. It's not going to help. You've got to get out there. And, someone like Peter, I've known him, now for about 27 minutes. I'm already thinking about how he may be able to help me in things that I'm doing, because I've been able to hear a little bit about what he's been doing. So, insights from others, extremely important.
Awesome. Thank you. I thought we might touch on a couple of different segments of partners and see if there's any insights. I'm also going to call out, we've got about 8 minutes left. So if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat so we can cover them. Any insights from either of you on partnering with government?
I love government.
You go for it. No, I was just going to say very quickly on government. I've done a few industry engagement type roles in government, and I think the one point to make on that is obviously there was a skills summit recently, and I think there's a lot of ideas. There's appetite for ideas, and there's money to support ideas in the skills sector, and that includes the vocational education sector. So one thing I'd say about government is contact them and reach out and get connected with key people, because there's a lot of money to support skills, the skills sector at the moment. That's just one point I wanted to make.
Great.
And for me, I love government, and a couple of reasons. We're very fortunate in this country that we've actually got terrific governments that really actually care. And to me, you know, they are on the pulse of what the community needs. And therefore, if you follow the government, you're following the money and you're following the needs. But the one thing that if you can partner with government and get in part of their programs, the one thing it brings you more than anything is credibility. So if you're pitching to a private company and you can say that you've got support from Global Vic or Study Melbourne or Study New South Wales, or I think it's called Study Sydney now, that credibility gets you a long way. In fact, it will get you in the door. And so there's a question there from Laura who says, you know, how do you go about getting some funding from government? I think is what she's asking. I would say find out and get it, because it will accelerate your business years ahead if you can get in good with the government and be seen as a safe set of hands.
Awesome, thank you. There was another question from Lauren that has said, we have a startup empowering women to create new opportunities in life and work by improving their spoken English fluency. We'd like to gravitate towards the impact space. What's the path to partner with a uni to conduct, for example, a research piece on the impact we're having and proof of that impact? Before I throw it open, I guess one piece I would say is the importance of being able to articulate your impact is gaining momentum. So it is important to be able to show not just here's our mission and our value and how great our product or user experience is, etc., but here's the impact. And part of that reason is obviously learners more and more, if I just look at it from an education perspective, are making decisions based on outcomes. So they are looking for the outcome of the learning experience, whether that's undergraduate and the earn and learn capability, etc. So it is important, but it also helps the prospective partners that you're looking to connect with to cut through why they should do business with you over XYZ who's already out in the market and maybe more established or have a greater customer base, etc., as part of that as well. In terms of the how to do it, I will stop talking in a second because I'm meant to be facilitating, is there's a couple of elements. Is what are you looking to measure? What unis in your ecosystem that you're already across have similar strategic goals that it's of importance to them? An important piece, and this is a challenge for any ed tech, but particularly early stages, to go through a research and an ethics committee process is not quick. So what is a reasonable time frame to do that? And that is likely to be part of the conversation you're going to have, because it's not going to be quick to get approval. And the actual measuring and report process, it takes that length of time for very valid reasons, which is having enough data, having the evidence and analysis to be able to back the output as well. Peter or Dom, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just I saw one of the other questions as well, government organisations, and I would suggest, I don't know if Lauren asked this, but to look at the skills organisations, or used to be called the skills service organisations, which is a Department of Education initiative, but they're doing some interesting work, especially in digital transformation, etc. So that's just one thing popped into my head. But with the impact, the evaluation, the assessment, maybe it's not always about going straight to the university as well. I would also look at somebody like NATI, the National Australian Translating and Interpreting Body, because they have a connection to the university sector as well. So I think that that's something that a school that's prominent in English language or language for non-English speaking backgrounds, etc., might be one angle, but the other angle might be a pseudo-government kind of agency. And I would say someone like NATI might be a good way into that kind of conversations, because they already have partnerships with the universities as well.
Yeah, Agreed. I should also call out, I sit on the board of the Digital Skills Organisation, which is one of the 3 skills organisations that were set up after the Joyce review of the vocational sector. VET in general is going through a transition period with the establishment of new industry clusters. So I think it'd be worth watching that space, and if vocational is an area that you're looking to service, as well as to what that change can mean for your startup and business as well. I guess from a uni perspective, given you do work in the uni space, Peter, what insights can you give for anyone that is looking to actually enter into a partnership with the university?
Yeah. So a couple of things, and I think the first thing that I thought of before today was really focusing on a pilot, or piloting your idea with either a cohort or a department or a school, if you can initially, to have a bit of proof of concept. And that could be done through a student project, a work integrated learning project, could be a group of alumni, etc. But piloting things, I like when I hear things piloted. I think the Alumni Networks is also a great one, because we have supported lots of things that have come through one of our alumni that has come through to them from potentially a startup and an edtech company, because that alumni is known to us, is well regarded, especially a brand like Melbourne Business School. So that's another tip. And I think the other thing is from an executive education perspective. So we do a lot in the future of learning space, learning and development. But I think not to forget the workforce learning and development piece. And what I mean there is not to just think about the university as its own entity, but the universities deal with big organizations as well. So if you have piloted something with a big organization or even a mid-sized organization, don't neglect to showcase that as well in your pitch or in your conversation, because the universities love hearing stuff that's been tested and proved successful in industry. It's not just something that has to be an academic success before. So if you did something with a bank, even maybe a small bank somewhere, and you can sort of bring that to the table, plus an alumni, plus here's what we like to do, pilot something with MBS for the next 6 months that focuses on the impact of blah using this technology. That would my ears would be burning if I had that kind of trio of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, I can only agree with you, even down to it shows the ability for your product or service or business to work across different segments of the learner base, but also the fact that you show the important skill set of how does this transfer across the learning cycle as well is important. If I can add to working with universities or any larger education organisation, one is when you're having those conversations, ask them, what is that procurement process? What insights can they share that make it easier for you to actually preempt their needs, as well as time frame? Quite often they have to work at a different pace than as a founder or an edtech company would like to work at. But there's reasons for that, and there's risk and policy and processes that they have to go through. So the more you're able to ask what that is and how do you support them in that. For example, at Open Learning, we used to have they still do. It's not like it disappeared when I left, but they, even having that clarity and the documents in line, your operations and your security documents, so that you have it on hand or are able to preempt, here it is, because I know you're going to get asked it from your IT department. And here's X, because I know I'm going to get asked that from your legal department. The more that you show that you've got your ducks in a row, the easier it is to actually get closer and quicker to signing the partnership agreement with them as well. I'd also say, particularly with your first couple of partnerships with the university, it's not a quick process. As much as you can streamline that as much, as you can, they are slower to work through. So if you're just working on a university partner, then I'd also be asking, who else are you looking to partner with, that you're not dependent on one type of partnership as well. Dom, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Because you work with diverse types of organisations.
Yeah, and my apologies. I actually missed the question at the front because I had to just nick out. But before we go on, I just wanted to clarify a comment that I made earlier. I made a flippant remark about your profile picture on LinkedIn, and I said that we don't want to see your torsos. And apologies if people misunderstood what I meant by that. And that is that the power of LinkedIn when you send a message to someone is that you get to see someone's face when the message comes in. In an email, you don't get that, although in Google now, some people do have that. So what I meant to say, and apologies if I've upset anyone, is that by just having your face, it means that when that message, and at the moment I've got about, probably 10 people that are trying to contact me via LinkedIn, I get to see people's faces. And if I've met them before, it means I can quickly recognize them and get back to them. So apologies if those who heard me say that, we don't want to see your torso in a picture on LinkedIn. I meant it because of the recognition piece. The other thing with pictures too is that if any graduates have got them dressed up in their graduation gown with the funny hat with the bit of string hanging down and whatever, probably not the most professional if you're looking to get a job in an industry. Change that to, again, a lovely professional photo of just your face. So hopefully that clears up that, and apologies if anyone did take offence to that. That was not my intention.
Thanks, Tom. To, I guess, position the question is, any insights on partnering with universities?
Universities, we deal with a lot of unis. We deal with 3 group of 8 and probably half a dozen all around the country. And they are absolutely terrific because, they're at the forefront of education. And again, it's about credibility. And if you can get in with one university, then it's really easy to sell your services to other universities if that's what your business is about. The only thing is, and I think you mentioned this before, the sales cycle is very long. It can often take a couple of years in order to get a university to partner with, but it is definitely worth the time and the effort and the energy and the resources and everything that goes with it, because once you get in one, you can normally get into many others.
Great, thank you. I am conscious of time, and I was given an extra 5 minutes. I promise I haven't just gone over time. There was one last question before I wrap up is, who should we partner with? For example, I've made a partnership with a machine supplier who will benefit from showing off their actual products and seeing it in their showroom and socials. I think one piece I will say is be open to different types of partnerships and testing what they look like and how they deliver as part of that, but also be really I don't want to say conservative, but realistically in your modeling, and don't put all of your eggs in one basket, because often in that sort of circumstance, you're testing and they're testing with you, and it will take time to gain momentum. So if you are doing, forecasting of revenue or volumes and that sort of pieces, often organizations will do, best case, moderate, and worst case scenario. It is more likely to be a moderate or worst case scenario in terms of testing out different types of partnerships, particularly if it's something new in the market as well. And that's okay. It doesn't mean don't go ahead with it, but it means that you're not banking on or haven't gone and resourced to deliver against something that is likely to take longer than you'd anticipated. The other thing I'll say is be realistic when you're setting timeframes for setting up and getting scale in your partnerships, because quite often there will be something in that cycle that will take longer than you anticipated as well as part of that. Any closing insights from either Peter or Dom before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say, just on that last point, with partnering, I think just thinking laterally. So is it a platform kind of partner or a delivery partner or an innovation partnership that could be evolving? So just not losing sight of the type of partnership that you could actually foster. But also with universities and education providers, as much as we copy each other and follow each other, they're also very different entities. So I've had a few opportunities come onto my desk, and it was assumptions were made that, because we did A with UNSW or B with Uni Melbourne, we'll probably want to do something similar with the business school. And my response was, well, no, I'm starting an innovation lab here. We're looking for something very, very different. So therefore, not to make those assumptions that they're homogenous. So definitely thinking about that. And I think also just not losing the side of seeing education as well as that skills or workforce sector as not too removed. So we're participating in a ASU GSV summit next year, which is really looking at global skills and workforce skills as much as education. So when you're thinking about ed tech, I think the workforce skills and the learning and development is also part of the language that we use as well, and part of that ecosystem that we encounter is those professionals as well, not just the education tech companies.
Yeah, the prevalence of lifelong learning and how often you see it, it's not just because we like saying the word, it's because it's important. Dom, any last comments?
I've got two last comments. Number one is the old Stephen Covey 7 habits. One of the habits is think win-win. When you're partnering with someone, you've got to remember it's got to be a win for you and a win for your partner. So make sure you're thinking about what they can get out of it just as much as what you can get out of it. There's got to be value on both sides. The second one is, especially when dealing with government, think about running pilots. Extremely useful. If you can run pilots with them and prove that your concept, that your solution to the problem actually works, it goes a long way to ensuring a faster and ongoing contracts with them. And so even the same with universities as well. So don't think you got to launch straight in. Do a pilot first, back yourself that you can prove what you've done.
Awesome. Thank you. And apologies for taking a few extra minutes, but really great conversation today. Dom and Peter, thank you so much for your time. And Sarah and the EduGrowth team, thanks for having me again.
Thank you very much. I'll repeat those remarks, Cherie. Thank you so much to you, Dom, and Peter and Cherie for a fantastic discussion. Lots of valuable insights to take away. The power of networking, the power of prioritizing partnerships, not putting it off with a busy or long to-do list, and working with government that they want to help and they've got the money to do so. So use them. So thank you very much for joining. And I think that about wraps up our Slido portion of the program. So I'd like to thank everyone who has tuned in from Slido over the course of our Launchpad Bootcamp series. It's been a pleasure to host you, and hopefully we'll engage with you again next year. And with that, we'll now transition to the second portion